This is the 2019 company con question. This is the bank statement note that we're going to look at. So again, I'm just looking at the bank statement note here. Every note like this starts with the general information that our bank statement account, that our bank account that we'll have here at the question 60,000 does not match up with the bank statement amount of 62,280, and we need to find out why they don't match up. The first note here is to do with, well, before we start with these, I always recommend that you deal with the notes as they are. Deal with what accounts these notes are relevant for, and then deal with the bank. Because there's a couple of other things you need to adjust here. It does change quite a bit. A check received from a debtor for 5,600 had been dishonored by the bank. This debtor had been declared bankrupt and made a credit transfer for a first and final payment of 30 cents for every €1 owed. So 5,600 euro was paid to us by a debtor. The check then went on to be dishonored. So what happens? Well, my debtors at the moment owe us 98,200. Basically, that's our balance at the 1st, 98,200. And what happened is that the check was dishonored. So that 98,200 was got to because we previously reduced this balance by 5,600, as somebody seemed to have paid us off. We now cancel that payment of 5,600. We're going to add that back in. A debtor has had a check dishonored. Basically, they owe us that money again. So I'm going to add it back here. The check is gone. Their payment didn't go through. They owe us that money. So I'm going to add 5,600. As you can see from the rest of it, what I'm doing with it is I have basically received 30 cents in respect of the euro, and the rest of it has been written off as a bad debt. This is all because you see when the debtor has been declared bankrupt and a first and final payment, 30 cents in respect to the euro. So 30 cents in respect to the euro means 30% of my debt was paid to me in the first and final payment. So 5,600 multiplied by 30% gives me 1,680. So I've received this 1,680. If I receive it, that means I'm not owed that money anymore, so I credit it to my debtor's account. And that was the first and final payment, which means this debtor is not going to pay us anything else at all. And I need to write the rest of it off as a bad debt written off. So the remaining 70% of the 5,600 goes as a bad debt written off. If you notice the debtor's account here, what's after happening is I'm after adding 5,600 and I'm after taking away 5,600. This note will not actually change your debtor's balance at all, but it's important to understand why we do all three of these things, as they all have a knock-on effect in terms of other adjustments. So what are the knock-on effects? Well, bad debt written off does not have an account of its own over here. It is separate to bad debt provision. They're completely separate. Bad debt written off, therefore, needs to be accounted for in the trading profit and loss. It is a selling and distribution expense, and therefore I need to include it into the accounts. I don't need to make a note for it, but I do need to kind of write it somewhere. That 3920 goes in as a selling and distribution expense. In terms of the bank, our other two adjustments are going to the bank. Our bank figure given in the question is 60,000 overdraft. This is my 60,000 overdraft bank balance. What's after happening? Well, I had to cancel a dishonored check. That 5,600 I thought was going into my bank. I thought I was going to increase my bank balance by 5,600. And that's how I would have got to 60,000. But what's after happening is it's after being cancelled. The check has bounced. So now that 5,600 has to basically I have to cancel my check. There was 5,600 I put in here that I would have received, and that's now got to be cancelled. I'm going to have to reduce my bank balance even further by 5,600. But from that 5,600, 30% of this have been sent to me, so I'm going to debit the 1,680 that I've received because they paid us the first and final payment. They paid us the 30 cent in respect of every euro, so 30% of it goes here. And yeah, sorry, I've dealt with the additional 3920 goes as a selling distribution expense. So the three different adjustments that we see up here will not affect our debtor's balance, but they have knock-on effects. I received the money, therefore I can add this as money I have in my bank. The check was cancelled, therefore my bank balance has to be reduced. And the remaining 3920 is what I'm going to have to write off as an expense. The second note is to do with a direct debit to a local refuse company for 860. The direct debit means I paid a local waste company €860. As you can see, there's nothing up here in terms of my P&L that is to do with waste or refuse or anything like that. However, everything like this that I call miscellaneous or sundry expenses needs to go in somewhere. So of all the accounts I can fit it into, I have a salaries and general expenses account. And whenever I have anything here that's I suppose a standalone expense, I'll put it in with sundry or general expenses, whichever one is in the question. So this additional expense has to be added to the current expense for salaries and general expenses. So you'd add 860. By the way, just to let you know, I'm not looking at the other adjustments here. Salaries has a previous adjustment earlier on in the question, the suspense adjustment. I'm not looking at that here, so I'm just looking at how I'd adjust for this. This is not a final balance figure for salaries and general expenses. And debtors had a previous adjustment figure as well, but again, I'm not looking at those adjustments. I'm just looking at this one as it's challenging. So the only thing I do for this note here is I'm going to charge the 860 as an expense. I'll put it into the general expenses account. And obviously I paid a local refuse company 860. So if I pay somebody, it's money out of my bank. That's the last thing I do to my bank account. I'm now going to change my balance in my bank account to 64,780. So on the credit side, it's a liability. The third note, anything to do with something had not been presented for payment, that means that I haven't told my bank yet. I've actually taken this money. A check for fees was issued to a director. I've actually sent this check from my company perspective. I've written the check, I've handed it over, and I've told my accountants for my company, oh, by the way, I sent a check off there for 2,500. Therefore, they would have reduced my bank balance already. But because the check hasn't been cashed by this director, the bank actually has no idea. It has not been presented for payment. So basically what that means whenever you see it is that the bank statement is actually hasn't included this adjustment yet. So all we look at here is the bank statement, and you never change this figure. You never change your bank account. You leave it alone. Whenever you see something had not been presented by payment, you only look at the bank statement figure. So my bank statement figure is an overdraft of 62,280. I have a check that had not been presented for 2,500. If I sent a check to my director, it means I paid them. So again, that's going to be further money out of my bank. So my bank balance from my bank statement is actually 64,780 again. I don't need to do anything with this. You do the adjustment and that's it. You balance your bank. This is the figure I take forward to my balance sheet. Again, please do not take both of them forward. This is not anything at all. This is from the bank's perspective. But from my own accounts, I'm going to take this forward as a creditor amount falling due within 1 year in my balance sheet.